Hey everybody, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga, which you can check out over on Amazon. And we've got some interesting kind of rumors flying around here on the Lord of the Rings front for Amazon's original series that I'm going to dive into here in just a little bit. I made a video not too long ago kind of talking about how Amazon has chosen the showrunners that they're going to have for their series, and that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are not a part of that, as was previously rumored. But that video kind of went through all the different people who were on the creative team of the Amazon series. And I'll link to that in the description if you guys want to check it out. But there's this Twitter account out there that has been posting a lot of interesting kind of leaks or rumors or what have you. And it is this at iFixTrailers account. And basically, this is the account that kind of dropped the bombshell that Marvel was considering making Blade a Muslim. And this time around, they're claiming that there are some creative discrepancies between the Tolkien scholar who is on the creative staff of The Lord of the Rings, Tom Shippey, and other executives who are overseeing the production of the show. And it says here that producers want to diversify the cast, including Asian, Latino, and African American actors, while Shippey suggests respecting the source material 100%. Stay tuned. And of course, the implication here being that the people who are running the Amazon show are wanting to do some forced inclusivity at the objection of the guy who's basically the expert on Tolkien here. And when I actually responded to iFixTrailers' tweet thread here, and I asked him, does he have a source for this? Can he talk about like where he's getting this information from? He basically said that the source is himself, that he's someone who's placed within Hollywood to kind of be exposed to this information, and that he can't reveal who he is for fear of losing his job. And I've heard that type of excuse before, and it's usually the type of excuse that someone says when they're just making stuff up. So I don't know how accurate the stuff that iFixTrailers is tweeting out is being. It seems very baity to me, and what I mean by that is clickbait type stuff, where he tweets out these outrageous rumors for franchises that people get excited about, and they're controversial, so they get him attention, they get him followers and stuff like that. And that seems to be what he's putting out there. Now, granted, I've looked through his timeline a bit. It does seem like he's someone who's kind of trying to post like leaks and spoilers and insider info and stuff like that. But none of it is sourced. None of it has any kind of way to verify whether or not it's true or not. It's just kind of him posting this stuff. And so, I did a video on his Blade tweet where he claims Blade was going to be turned into a Muslim by Marvel, because the justification there was that Mahershala Ali, who is going to be playing Blade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is a Muslim in real life, and therefore, in order to appeal to the Muslim demographic, Marvel was considering making the character he's playing a Muslim as well, just for the sake of inclusivity and appealing to a different demographic. Now, he offered no proof of that, but it was interesting enough to report on because it's believable, considering Marvel's kind of new inclusive take on their Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, with this, typically Hollywood, Hollywood's been going down this trend of forced diversity in their adaptations of stuff, where they'll take a beloved property and then just kind of shoehorn in people of color, just for the sake of having people of color in the end product, as opposed to having it be integral to the story. And that kind of upsets people who are fans of the source material, who want to see the source material respected, as opposed to seeing a political agenda pushed. And so people get very passionate about this stuff. There are people out there who defend inclusion and diversity in Hollywood fare, like TVs and movies, and they think that a lot of these older classic franchises, which have been traditionally white, should be changed in order to, help people of all races and backgrounds have some type of representation in these beloved franchises. And then there are people who are purists who basically want things to not change and to stay as they are, and just kind of like, respect the source material. And these things get pretty passionate, these disagreements. And I think that, iFix Trailers here could very well be trying to prey on those passions in order to get attention. Now, the really devious thing about this guy's tweets is that there's always a kernel of believability in them. And the believability here is from how Tom Shippey would want to see this stuff done. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Tom Shippey, let me just give you a quick kind of breakdown on what his background is. So this is an article from the Wirt Zone, and it's basically talking about when Tom Shippey and artist John Howe joined the Lord of the Rings production on Amazon. And this is what it has to say about Shippey. Shippey is the author of The Road to Middle-earth in 1982, a relatively early and influential work of Tolkien scholarship, and has collaborated with Harry Harrison on science fiction short stories and a novel trilogy. Shippey is also a noted retired professor of Middle and Old English literature and taught and worked at Oxford. He met Tolkien shortly before the author's death. Shippey is noted particular for his view that Tolkien was a traumatized war author whose experiences in World War I shaped his outlook and fiction. Shippey worked on Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movie trilogy by advising on the lore and dialects of the fictional languages. Shippey's work was quoted by Christopher Tolkien in his History of Middle-earth series. So basically, Tom Shippey is a Tolkien purist. He's a guy who basically literally wrote the book on Tolkien, and he's considered to be an expert on this world that Tolkien created, and he is definitely someone who kind of shepherded the movie versions of the Lord of the Rings to what they became, and he was brought on board Amazon's adaptation for the TV series, specifically because he's so knowledgeable about Tolkien and Middle-earth and stuff like that. Now, it's believable that Tom Shippey would want to keep as close to the source material as possible. And, Tolkien's, Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, it's been criticized by some as being quote-unquote racist because there are no people of color in the Lord of the Rings series. And, there are reasons for that have nothing to do with racism. First of all, Lord of the Rings is based off of English folklore, like the UK. Basically, Tolkien drew on, established myths and legends of his home country to create Middle-earth. And it's a traditional Anglo-Saxon, type background here. So, the men in Middle-earth are representative of the typical Englishman, which, happens to be white. So, based off of that, like the men in his stories, are just assumed to be, white, Caucasian. But in addition to that, Middle-earth, their races aren't differentiated by skin color. They're actually differentiated by species. So, like, you have, orcs and elves and dwarves and, Ents and stuff like that. And they're representative of a fantasy version of diversity. So the different diverse races in Middle-earth aren't necessarily kind of differentiated by skin color. They're differentiated by genetics, and that's important to note. But another thing is also that J.R.R. Tolkien heavily relies on light and dark symbolism. Light being good, dark being bad. And the orcs and the evil creatures of his fantasy world tend to be darker skinned and darker complexioned. And so that's also kind of why people can argue, it's racist because dark skin equals evil or bad or ugly or like whatever. when actually it's more of a symbolic thing, with the absence of light being, a representation of evil, and sunlight and brightness and light being a representation of good. And keep in mind that this is a fantasy world, so it's fiction, it's made up, so anything can go here. But the interesting thing to note about this debate in particular is that Hollywood has come under fire for forcing diversity into established properties that longtime fans don't like. However, we have to keep in mind that a company like Amazon has to take into account a worldwide audience when they're planning out these shows. I mean, Amazon spent $1 billion on the rights to The Lord of the Rings to make a TV series and multiple TV series, as a matter of fact. So they have a lot invested in this, and they want to make sure they can recoup that investment. And part of that is appealing to foreign territories. This isn't just about the United States and Great Britain. This is about all countries all over the world that Amazon caters to. And so, obviously, by including characters and actors who are Asian, Latino, and African American, they appeal to a broader audience because people, see their race being represented in the show, and they want to, check it out. And so, that's a consideration that studio executives have to make, because they have to make sure that this show not only plays to American audiences, but also plays to foreign audiences as well. So it's nice to have a good swath of representation in the movie or in the TV show for that very reason. And keep in mind that the TV show is going to be based on the Second Age, which is something that we've never seen before, whether it be in the books or in the movies, because it's being pulled from the Silmarillion background stuff that Tolkien came up with. So, I mean, who's to say that these, different skin colors didn't exist in Middle-earth at some point? I believe the Second Age spans close to 4,000 years. So a lot can happen in that time. Maybe the bad guys wiped out all this diversity and there were only white guys left. I mean, who knows? By the time the Lord of the Rings rolled around, all these guys were extinct. But that's the great thing about fiction and fantasy, is anything is possible. Anything can be made up. And you can have room to maneuver here. You don't have to stay 100% to the source material, because frankly, the source material was never finished for the Silmarillion. If this were strictly, a remake of the Lord of the Rings novels or the Hobbit novels as a TV show, then I could see Tom Shippey really kind of hammering this home. But because it's happening in the Second Age, and because there's actually no source material based off, it's just notes that Tolkien was kind of exploring. There's a lot of room to maneuver here, and there's a lot of stuff that they can do that won't upset continuity or fans or something like that. So I think that for that reason alone, this tweet kind of claiming that there's some confrontation or discrepancies here feels like bait to me. It feels like this is just clickbaiting for the sake of getting attention. But that being said, I mean, who knows? This could be an actual kind of, confrontation that's going on behind the scenes in the creative rooms of, the Lord of the Rings TV show. They did just announce, the new showrunners for the Lord of the Rings TV show. So it seems kind of early on in the process. And I'm sure that when it comes down to figuring out the characters and the casting and what the races are going to be and stuff like that, that is still kind of in its early stages, and it's probably going to go through a lot of evolution by the time it gets to actual production. But this just seems to me like a rumor meant to kind of stir things up. So I don't know how much stock to put into this. But what I would like to know is, what do you guys think? Do you think this is clickbait? Do you think there's something to it? What do you think about including a more diverse cast into the Lord of the Rings TV show on Amazon? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Why? Please let me know in the comments. I really appreciate it when you guys comment on my videos, and I love interacting with y'all. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel for more movie news, TV news, and entertainment news and analysis. And this is Matthew Kadish. I will catch y'all later.